said, and I'm quoting you again, the ship of Israel's security has sailed in the wrong direction. It seems to me that what you're saying is that, particularly with regard to Gaza, what Israel has done in recent years, including, let us not forget, several wars, the last of which in 2014, Operation Protective Edge, killed more than 2,000 Palestinians. The UN says at least 65% of those Palestinians killed were civilians, and we know that hundreds of them were children. You're saying that Israel's besieging tactics in Gaza, the fact that Gaza doesn't really have power supplies that work, it doesn't have clean water, it has a jobless rate of 60% or more, you're saying all of this isn't tough enough, that Israel should be hammering Gaza harder. Is that it?
No, I said we should be hammering Hamas harder. I have no issue whatsoever with the Gazan people. I have big issues with Hamas, whose charter and actions clearly state that they want to annihilate every Jew in Israel. They say explicitly, we want to kill all the Jews, and by the way, they shoot thousands of missiles at Israel. I think indeed Israel has to be much tougher on our enemies, and we have to, yes, kill every terrorist who shoots a rocket at us, something we've not been doing for quite a few years.
Just look at the record, Mr. Bennett. I don't want to repeat myself, that the last big assault on Gaza killed more than 2,000 Palestinians, most of whom were civilian. We see in our media every week the images of the standoff between Palestinian protesters who have, sometimes they have stones, sometimes they have flaming torches. They go to the fence, they are shot by Israeli service personnel. We have seen more than 100 killed, thousands wounded. And you're telling me that you want the Israeli army and the Israeli Air Force to up the ante and kill more people. That's what you're saying.
No, I have a better suggestion, that the Palestinians stop shooting rockets at Israel.
I don't know if you're maybe not understanding my question, but when you respond to the rocket fire that we saw as part of that recent flare-up in Gaza, you respond with your Air Force, sometimes you respond with troops on the ground. But the reality is, and the record shows it, that the people who suffer are the civilian population, including children. That is the reality, and you want more of it.
No, that is the reality, because the Hamas, cowardly, hides behind its own children. You know, all this talk about proportionality, if you were walking on the street and from a residential home someone was shooting at you, you'd shoot back. You wouldn't be asking who's in that home. Anyone who shoots at my kids, I'm going to shoot back. And the only proportions I can think about are of the coffin of that terrorist who's shooting at me.
Let's talk about the reality of the UN reaction. We've seen the recent, now he's retired, but the recent UN Commissioner for Human Rights, Zeid Ra'ad Hussein, say that Israel's response is suggestive of something entirely and wholly disproportionate. And he looks at the casualty figures on the Palestinian side. We also know that the International Criminal Court is still investigating what you did in Operation Protective Edge in 2014. Do you understand that the scrutiny being brought to bear upon Israel goes right through the international community and runs the risk of tarnishing Israel's reputation in a very significant way?
Here's an idea. I would relocate the International Criminal Court to the outskirts of Gaza for just 1 week and feel what the citizens of Israel, of Sderot, feel when they're attacked by 530 rockets in 1 day. For heaven's sake, let me be clear. We have no claims whatsoever for Gaza. Let them lead their lives. We pulled out of Gaza. We pulled out our army from Gaza. We handed the keys to Mahmoud Abbas, and these people have decided to shoot at us. So when they stop attacking will be the day there'll be peace. We have no claims, we don't want anything from them. Just want them to lead their lives and let us lead our lives.
Thing is,
and they're not doing that. As long as they continue attacking us, we will fight back, regardless of the hypocrisy of the international institutions, which are just a big home of hypocrisy.
Well, I understand that you have serious political ambition, and we've discussed the politicking you've been involved in recent days. But the problem is, it isn't just the international community that thinks with your uber-hawkish stance that you're going far too far. Even the Israeli army thinks you're going far too far, because in recent days you've been criticizing the army itself. You said, this is a quote from you just a few days ago, "We impose countless restrictions on our own soldiers, legal as well as mental. Our fighters are more afraid of the military advocate general than they are of Hamas's leaders." You were immediately rebuked by the IDF chief of staff for saying that. He said you got it plain wrong.
You know, the International Criminal Court was founded after Second World War as a lesson how to prevent genocide and those sort of situations where there's a lawless area. It has nothing to do with what's going on here. Here it's really simple.
But I'm not asking you about the
rockets at us.
Again, I'm not asking you about the ICC
shooting rockets at us, and we're fighting back. And we will continue to fight back, regardless of all these legal shackles. Yes, I want to remove them because I think it's immoral. It's profoundly immoral to show your second cheek to an enemy who's trying to kill you. All I'm saying is, for heaven's sakes, stop trying to kill the Jews. That's all. It's a really simple suggestion, and that's all they need to do.
But it's a simple suggestion, but it is not an answer in any way to my question. My question was about the IDF Chief of Staff, Gadi Eisenkot, rebuking you for criticizing the Army's own military advocate general. The Chief of Staff responded by saying, never mind what Mr. Bennett says, the military advocate general is part of the IDF's strength. So your contention that the IDF is fighting with one hand tied behind its back is denied even by the IDF itself.
Look, the IDF has a mission. It's to win wars. It's to beat our enemies. Our goal as the political level is to provide them the freedom of action to go do the job. And I think that if the Jewish state wants to be here 50 years from now and 200 years from now, we have to focus on one thing: getting our enemies to understand that it'll never work. Whatever they do will not work. We're here to stay, and then and only then we'll be able to reach sustainable peace.
You've never been a big fan of the Europeans in terms of their view of what's happening in Israel. You've never been a big fan of the ICC. You are a huge fan, or at least you have been, of Donald Trump. You've talked about your deep respect for him. You've talked about him as Israel's best friend. Are you a little bit worried that the signals we are getting from Washington now suggest that Donald Trump has decided, and he says he's going to launch this deal of the century, a peace proposal for Israel-Palestine? He has decided, and he said this in September, that he thinks a two-state solution would work best. Are you worried about that?
Yes. Well, you know, any plan that President Trump has, we first of all will take a serious look at it and a respectful look at it. At the end of the day, we'll do what serves Israel's best interests, because we live here, we're going to live here for the next thousands of years, and we have to take care of our future.
Yeah, well,
but certainly anything that he presents to us, we'll take a serious look at.
Well, you'll have to take a very serious look, won't you, given the degree of support that the Trump administration has given to you and your government. And this is what Donald Trump said. He said, Israel will have to pay a higher price because they won a very big thing. Of course, he was talking about the U.S. decision to move the embassy to Jerusalem. He said previously they, that is the negotiators, could never get past the fact of Jerusalem becoming the capital, but now that's off the table. There's nothing more to negotiate. So they, the Palestinians, will get something very good now because it's their turn next. That's the reality you're going to have to deal with.
I'm very supportive. I think he's right that Jerusalem has been taken off the table, and that's great news for the future of the Israeli-Palestinian relationship. At the end of the day, you know, I don't want to speculate. We'll see what comes, and we'll take it by that.
I guess the fundamental problem that people in Israel and outside Israel ask of you, Mr. Bennett, is what is your long-term strategic vision for your country. You're a guy who is absolutely steadfastly opposed to a two-state solution. You say you want to annex all of the land upon which the Jewish settlements sit in the occupied West Bank, but you don't want to offer citizenship to the Palestinian population of the West Bank. To many people inside Israel, and one could go back to former prime ministers like Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barak, but also leader of the opposition, Tzipi Livni, they say that if Israel pursues your vision, it will end up being an apartheid-style state.
They're flatly wrong. There is a two-state solution right now. There's a Palestinian full-fledged state in Gaza, and it's been a huge and unmitigated disaster. So you tried it out once. We're not going to try it out again on a bigger scale when it failed so colossally in Gaza.
If you intended to lay siege to the West Bank as you did to Gaza, there might be some relevance to that. But of course, that's not on the table because you've got all these Jewish settlements which you intend to annex. It comes back to this basic question: if Israel pursued your vision, you would end up with a population before too long that was majority Arab Palestinian, and yet you would not countenance giving them a full free voice in a democratic system. So you would be violating democratic values and international law.
Yeah, I'm touched by the care. You know, in Gaza, you're confusing cause and consequence. The moment the Gazans decide to stop fighting Israel, there is no siege, by the way. Right now, they can bring in as many trucks of food or clothing or you name it. It's unlimited. They don't have a lot of money there because Mahmoud Abbas is trying to starve them. So first of all, there is no siege, but even what there is, the moment they decide to turn into a peaceful country, they can have anything they want because we're out of there. But it's been a terrible disaster, and we're not suckers to try and do that yet again on a bigger scale in Judea and Samaria.
I appreciate it.
In terms of my future vision,
yes. Go on.
Go ahead.
No, I'd appreciate it if you'd address that point, that you want the land, you're determined to annex it, even though that would be illegal under international law, but you don't want to give the Arab Palestinian population, which would very soon be a majority in the whole land of this future Israel, you do not want to give them a full voice. It would violate democratic values and international law.
No, you haven't read my plan. In the areas that we would apply Israeli law, those Palestinians in those areas, which numbers between 50,000 and 100,000 Palestinians, they would be offered Israeli citizenship. So actually, factually, you're wrong. The rest of the territory would become an autonomy governed by them, managed by them. They have everything they want. It would be less than a state in a sense that they cannot have an army, and they cannot have an influx of 7 million descendants of Palestinian refugees and create an overflow demographic disaster in the land of Israel.
We're almost out of time. One last simple question which takes us back to the beginning. You made a power play against Benjamin Netanyahu. It failed. Do you still see yourself as a future Prime Minister of Israel?
After the Netanyahu era, I intend to become Israel's prime minister. As long as Netanyahu is around and he's doing a fairly good job, I intend to stand beside him, to help him, hopefully as the defense minister in the next government.
How long do you give him? How long do you think this Netanyahu era, as you put it, is going to last?
Got no idea. You know, he's got genes of his parents led long lives, and I wish him a very long life. And as long as the Israeli public supports him, he'll continue being Prime Minister of Israel.
Naftali Bennett, I thank you very much for being on HardTalk.
Thank you very much, Stephen.